Now, a few months ago, I showed you the cleanest robot vacuum cleaner that I've ever featured on the channel, the Eufy S1 Pro. And to save you some time to answer the question out of which Eufy robot cleaner you should buy if you've got the budget available, I still think the Omni S1 Pro is the absolute king of RoboVacs right now. And if that satisfied your curiosity, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon. But that was the first and only Eufy robot vacuum cleaner that I've tried. And since then, I've been testing some of their cheaper options, which actually have some features that the most expensive robot vacuum cleaner that Eufy sells doesn't have. So today, I want to pick apart a couple of their other all-in-one systems to see how they compare to each other and to see if any of the others are capable of wowing me just as much as the Eufy S1 Pro has done. So in this episode, I'll be running through a comparison between the S1 Pro, the X10 Pro and the C20, and I'll try and answer the question of, can you go for the cheapest one out of the three, or do you need to go for the most expensive option to get the most out of what Eufy Clean robots can offer you? So let's start with the form factor, because they're all quite a bit different in design. Perhaps the most traditional of them is the X10, which is largely what we're used to when it comes to RoboVacs and base stations. The robot is slightly different, with a more squared shape on the front, but it also has a lot of traditional design choices of an all-in-one cleaning robot. It's got a little nav hat on the top, it's got the sensors on the front, and a single sweeper brush and two large rotating mopping pads on the back. The base station is boxy and enclosed and features a mop washing and drying section and a clean and dirty water reservoir and a dust collection bag that's 2.5 litres, and there's nothing particularly stand out about its design other than it seems pretty neatly put together. It's the other two, however, which catch the eye when it comes to the design. The S1 is the model we've already seen on the channel, and I couldn't praise the design enough. The base station is the thing that immediately draws the eye. It's super futuristic, so much so, wait a minute, hold on, I can hear it ringing now. Where are you? In one of the drawers. I've got a lot of drawers here. There we go. Hello? Oh, it's the aliens, and they want it back. Now, along with it being the most futuristic, it's also the tallest base station that I've ever seen, which has benefits from me being 6'8" and that I don't have to bend myself over in half just to empty or fill the water reservoirs. But there's almost nothing like it in respect to the design on the market. That is, until I've gotten hold of their newer C20, because these share quite a few similarities in design aesthetic. The C20 design language certainly has adopted similar futuristic alien aesthetic on the base station, but with a more traditional layout rather than being a giant pillar. As for the robots of the S1 and C20, they've both moved away from having the nav hat on the top, and instead all the sensors are built into the front using Eufy's proprietary laser navigation, which ultimately has resulted in a shorter height and more capability of getting under lower furniture. Now, the differences between the two are the S1 features two side brushes and the newer roller mop system, rather than this, the C20, which features the standard single side brush and the buffing pads on the bottom. And I'll come back to the impact of the differences of the mop later in the episode. But let's chow down now onto the numbers and functions of these three to hash out their differences. And the most important one, evidently, is the suction capabilities. With the C20, you've got a single side brush, main brush, and has a total of 7,000 pascals of suction. The S1 and the S10 have 8,000 pascals of suction, but the difference in efficiency comes from the fact that the S1 has those two side brushes rather than the single brush of the S10. Now, I've always been a fan of dual brushes because I believe it ends up being more efficient and has a better ability to sweep debris into the path of the main brush. Having a single side brush can sometimes result in missing small bits. It's not a huge difference, but it can be noticeable. I also think that the added suction of 1,000 pascals in both of these models adds to the efficiency of each cleaning cycle. Although I will say at 7,000 pascals, the C20 still has a remarkable level of suction. And when testing them all, they all seem to perform very well, well enough not to be concerned too much about the difference in this spec. Interestingly, the S10 and C20 have something that the S1 doesn't, however, and that's a little detangling comb. Both of these have the ability to drop a sharp-toothed comb down onto the brush while spinning in reverse to detangle it, which I think is fantastic. It's something that's absolutely needed in households with pets or women, or men with long hair, I guess. But anyone who has a robot vacuum cleaner and dogs, women or men with long hair living in the house will know the pain of having to untangle the brush almost on a bi-weekly basis. But other than those spec differences, each performs very well, and admittedly it's not a huge variance in capabilities when it comes to the vacuuming functionality. The mopping, however, this is where the difference becomes chalk and cheese. The Omni S1 Pro's mopping system is very different to the other two in the sense that it features that roller mop rather than the dual buffing pads that these two have. Now, I'm a big fan of both of these types over the standard vibrating plate style, which you typically see in much cheaper options. For starters, the mop is a roller style mop and on the round robe, and that's simply because they're much more efficient at scrubbing the floor clean. But the big difference between the pads and the rollers is that the mop is continuously being cleaned while it's in use. As it spins round, dirty water and gunk are kind of squeegeed out and collected in the onboard wastewater tank. This results in a very clean mop throughout the entire clean. With the other two, the pads are only continuously secreting water, with all of the dirt the pads collect washed off at the end of a cycle. What this means is that the rooms they clean earlier in the cycle will be being wiped with cleaner mop heads compared to the very end after they've scrubbed the dirt from the first few rooms or areas it cleans. It's not that this pad style is bad, of course. I've been a big fan of the technology since I first tried it a few years ago, but it's absolutely undeniable that the new roller mop style is by far superior than the pads, which is why the Omni S1 Pro is absolutely the best mopping system out of all of these three. And if you have the majority hard floors in your house like I do, then this is definitely the one you'll want to look at for that sheer raw mopping power. Now, there is another element of the mopping actually that makes the S1 the best out of the three, and that's that it uses ozonated water through a process of ozonification. Ozonifying. Ozonation. I'm not sure what the correct name of the process of ozoning the water is, but whatever the correct linguistic term is, this is an insane technology that's essentially situated in the water tank that splits water molecules into individual atoms to kill any bacteria that might be in the water, basically making the water the cleanest water that you'll ever use to mop your floor. Aside from using bottled Fiji water, I'd probably say that's a guarantee. But between the other two, there's not a great deal in it. The main difference from what I understand is the amount of pressure that's applied to the mops. In the C20, the pressure is around 600 grams, and in the S10, it's 1 kilograms of downward pressure. This means that the S10, in theory, will be able to scrub and buff harder spills and stuff that's stickier on the floor. Now, there are some more nuanced differences, such as slight differences in the hardware, and there's even a few software and AI differences, although none of which I really feel make a significant difference, or difference enough to discuss at length when compared to the other stat differences. But the higher end models with the S10 and S1 do have slightly more advanced obstacle avoidance, which could be handy for those in a more busy environment. But ultimately, I've now run you through the core spec differences of the lot. So now let's talk about the price differences between them all, because there's quite a range here. Now, I'm going to use the King's Pound recommended retail price here, but it would be worth noting that some of these were on discount when I was filming this review. So for the most accurate pricing, it would be worth checking out the links in the description. That'll give you the most up-to-date pricing. But starting with the cheapest, which is, and this one surprised me sort of, the Omni C20, which has an RRP of £599. Then we have the middle option, the X10 Pro Omni at just £200 more at £799. And then jumping massively forward is the Omni S1 Pro at £1,499, which is way ahead of the other two in terms of cost. So with all of those facts laid out, let's answer the question, which one should you get? Well, Annoyingly, the answer is very subjective, and it is all down to your personal needs because they've got unarguably some strengths. The C20 is absolutely the best value of the three, not necessarily because it's the cheapest of the three, but because it also offers a lot at the price it's at. When comparing to other options on the market from other competitors, it has specs that are usually reserved for much higher priced options. If you count for the high level of suction, the mop washing and drying, and the fact there's no nav hat, making this a really slimline device for accessing hard to reach areas, and add that to the design aesthetic looking better than almost anything else on the market, other than perhaps the S1 of course, for $599 it's an absolute bargain, and for the price that I saw it on sale for, it was almost unbelievable. Going back just a year or two, this sort of technology was in excess of £1,500, so to bring it down to this price is just making the technology more accessible for people with smaller budgets for this type of tech. But despite my love for the C20, it hasn't stolen my heart completely because the S1 is still my favourite. It's an absolute powerhouse, and it makes this thing perhaps the best cleaning robot I've ever seen a robot vacuum capable of. It's not that the others do a bad job, it's that this is the Marie Kondo or Kim Woodburn of robot vacuum cleaners. It just outshines, and I'm sure there's a pun in there somewhere, but everything I've tested. But it does come at a price, and that price is high. But if your budget can stretch to it, I can promise that you will not be disappointed with the S1 Pro at all. Now, as for the S10, well, this is perhaps the least memorable of the three, but that's because I think it's the most safe. It's just your typical all-round, all-in-one robot vacuum cleaner with some excellent specs, decent functionality, and you can't deny that in terms of aesthetics, it falls a smidgen behind the others. So who is this for? Well, the specs are better than the C20, and it is a more capable device, so I guess if you want something more traditional, and something with as good a cleaning as you can get without jumping to the £1,500 tag of the S1, then the S10 is the place to be. And it's also got the detangling comb, which is very handy, you can't deny. Think of it as a bowl of porridge, not too hot, not too cold, or a bed that's not too hard or not too soft. It's the Goldilocks of the three, but in my opinion plays it a little bit safe when compared to the incredible design of the C20 and S1. But what do you guys think of the Eufy Clean range? Do you already have one of these? Do you prefer the alien designs of the C20 and S1 or the more traditional design of the S10? Let us all know in the comments below, and if today's episode has helped you decide which Eufy robot vacuum cleaners to go for, then make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe button, and remember to check out the current prices of the C20, the S10 and the S1 at the links in the description, and I'll see you guys back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.